To become a qualified vampire hunter, the man specially plated his axe with silver, determined to avenge his parents with absolute force. However, facing those invisible, elusive, immortal creatures, he must quickly learn to fight in the darkness to remain undefeated. During every training session, Lincoln was beaten black and blue, relying solely on sheer willpower to endure. Despite this, he never once thought of giving up, because he knew clearly in his heart that only by mastering exquisite combat skills could he eradicate those ugly creatures who killed his parents. It turned out that due to cowardice in his childhood, Lincoln witnessed his mother being murdered but was powerless to stop it. When he finally gathered the courage as an adult to find the killer Bartz and pulled the trigger, he discovered the gun was loaded with a dud round. Fortunately, he reacted swiftly, barricading himself in a wooden shed and using his body to hold the door shut while frantically reloading gunpowder, managing to kill Bartz at the critical moment. Believing his revenge was complete, Lincoln discarded the murder weapon and prepared to flee the scene. Unexpectedly, in the blink of an eye, the corpse on the ground mysteriously vanished. Before Lincoln could even process his confusion, Bartz transformed into a hideous monster, suddenly pouncing and pinning him down, then slammed his body violently against the ground. Caught completely off guard by Bartz, Lincoln was filled with terror. As death seemed imminent, a mysterious man suddenly appeared in the crisis, effortlessly hurling Bartz away. When Lincoln awoke from unconsciousness, he found himself taken to a dilapidated castle. Through conversation, he learned that Bartz, his mother's killer, was actually a legendary vampire. Luckily, Lincoln was fortunate enough to encounter Henry, a vampire hunter, or he would have surely died the previous night. Hearing Henry had extensive knowledge of hunting vampires, Lincoln, blinded by hatred, desperately begged him to accept him as an apprentice. After much convincing, Henry finally agreed. But when it came time to choose a weapon, Lincoln rejected all firearms and instead chose a trusty axe as his weapon of choice. Under Henry's careful tutelage, Lincoln grew increasingly powerful, mastering the axe with great proficiency, and quickly learned the methods and gained experience for hunting vampires. Although these dark creatures gained sunlight tolerance by using sunscreen, silver-plated weapons could still inflict fatal wounds. Furthermore, lacking souls, vampires cast no reflection in mirrors. This was the only method Henry taught Lincoln to identify the enemy. Through Henry, Lincoln learned that Bartz was merely a minor leader among the vampires, and the true enemy was Adam, the progenitor who created countless vampires. Adam and his sister Vadoma had existed in America for centuries. Early on, they survived by slaughtering native tribes and settlers. When European invaders brought slaves to this land, the siblings saw an unprecedented opportunity. They bought large numbers of slaves for plantations to perform intense cotton picking, generating profit while solving the vampires' food source problem. Through brutal exploitation and oppression, Adam and his sister quickly established a powerful underground kingdom in the American South. Yet even this wasn't enough. Over the years, they pushed northward, committing countless murders. The duty of the vampire hunters was to maintain the north-south balance, ensuring the country remained ruled by humans, not those monsters. To help Lincoln grow quickly through combat, Henry sent him alone to an unfamiliar town on the north-south border for experience. By day, he worked in a general store, studying law in his spare time. By night, he hunted vampires hidden in the town, following clues provided by Henry. The store owner, making sunscreen, sensed trouble and attacked first, disrupting Lincoln's sight before triggering a mechanism that hung him upside down in the basement. Seeing rows of slaves being drained of blood beside him, Lincoln panicked, struggling to break free. The owner kicked away his axe, pulling out a straight razor to bleed him. Fortunately, Henry had taught him always to have a backup plan. Lincoln seized the chance, biting a dagger falling from his belt, and with lightning speed, slit the owner's throat. Seizing the moment, he strained, cut the ropes, grabbed his axe, and slew the first monster of his life. After burying the body, Lincoln felt no emotion inside, knowing his journey as a hunter had only just begun. In the following years, Henry sent constant letters, and Lincoln's combat skills honed to excellence. Even invisible vampires gained no advantage against him. Lincoln soon detected subtle shifts in the air, using a thrown axe as a distraction to instantly sever his opponent's head. Within just half a year, hundreds of graves marked the buried creatures, and Lincoln finally earned Henry's approval. It was time to face Bartz, the vampire who killed his mother, alone. But he never expected Bartz's acute sense of smell. The moment Lincoln appeared at the ranch, the vampire scented his nemesis on the air. Bartz didn't take Lincoln seriously at all. racing alongside the panicked herd of horses before leaping with brute force to pin two steeds to the ground. Lincoln couldn't react in time and was swiftly tripped by the tumbling horses. Before he could steady himself in the chaos, Bartz shot skyward and dove straight down. Fortunately, tempered by long battles, Lincoln was no longer the cowardly boy he once was. Drawing his axe, he pressed it against Bartz's neck, using the stampeding horses to slam the vampire hundreds of meters away. Yet a vampire who had lived centuries would not concede defeat easily. Bartz steadied himself and actually hurled a horse at Lincoln. Lincoln used the momentum, mounting the steed and rising to his feet, brandishing his massive axe as he charged once more towards Bartz, whom he was determined to kill with his own hands. In the fight, the two maneuvered constantly above the herd. With excellent mimicry, Lincoln quickly mastered Bartz's movements, gathering strength to unleash another lethal strike. Bartz was flung to the cliff edge, desperately clinging to Lincoln's ankle, refusing to let go. With a maniacal laugh, he dragged Lincoln down into the abyss. Bartz believed his powerful regeneration would give him the upper hand, but Lincoln gave him no chance, swiftly activating the hidden spear in the axe handle and pulling the trigger, personally ending the murderer of his mother. Yet even at death's door, Bartz remained unrepentant, declaring there were thousands more vampires on this land and they would never stop until America was wholly theirs. As Lincoln's axe came crashing down, the scene shifted to a dark alley where a lost young girl was being harassed by a drunken man who failed to notice the bloodthirsty monster slowly emerging from the shadows. Following the sound of agonized screams, Lincoln made the horrifying discovery that his own mentor was a detested vampire. Seeing this, Henry tried to explain, but Lincoln charged without listening. It turned out Henry had been a skilled vampire hunter in life, but one day while out with his wife, they were suddenly ambushed by Adam. Seeing a vampire vanish instantly put Henry on high alert. He focused intensely on subtle shifts in the air, narrowly dodging a fatal blow, then seized the moment to slash with a hidden dagger, instantly severing the monster's proud fangs. Henry's calm, precise movements made the progenitor vampire Adam regard him with newfound respect. Unable to contain his excitement, Adam decided to personally confront this legendary hunter. Henry never imagined Adam's power far exceeded expectations. Within a single exchange, he was knocked down, nearly losing his life. In the crisis, Henry's wife, fearing for his safety, rushed to help, only to be captured by Adam's minions. Realizing how much the woman meant to Henry, Adam chose not to kill them immediately. Instead, he turned Henry into a vampire and right before his eyes, savagely bit his wife to death, condemning the hunter to an eternity of guilt. Uncontainable rage instantly ignited Henry's fighting spirit. Grabbing his dagger, he charged recklessly at Adam, trying to kill him. Yet no matter how Henry struggled, his body seemed uncontrollable, unable to land the killing blow. Under Adam's mocking gaze, he learned of God's curse forbidding vampires from killing each other. They could only die by human hands. To avenge his wife, Henry imparted all his knowledge to Lincoln, who harbored his own deep hatred for vampires, hoping Lincoln's axe would eradicate the evil. But upon discovering Henry's true nature, Lincoln chose to part ways, embarking on his hunting path alone. He thought operating solo would conceal his identity as a hunter, yet Adam still discovered Lincoln's pocket watch on a slain vampire. The vampire army, under orders, captured Lincoln's childhood friend Johnson, using him as leverage to force Lincoln to attend a ball at a southern plantation. Though Lincoln knew this deadly trap meant certain death, to rescue his friend, he journeyed with his companion Joshua to the vampire stronghold of New Orleans. As night fell, their carriage arrived at the meeting point. But strangely, slaves who should have been lowly were treated as honored guests, dancing gracefully within the castle. Sensing something amiss, Lincoln drew his axe, preparing to infiltrate the manor. Moments after he left, the monsters, unable to suppress their bloodlust any longer, revealed their true forms, bearing fangs to attack their dance partners. When Lincoln burst through the doors, the room's temperature plummeted, and the waiting vampires swarmed towards him. Fortunately, relentless daily combat had transformed Lincoln. Even against elusive, endless foes, he remained composed and held the upper hand. Seeing the tide turn, Adam's sister Vadoma intervened personally. Using her cloak as cover, she ambushed Lincoln from behind, pinning him down. The reason Adam spared his life was to use Johnson as leverage, threatening Lincoln into eliminating Henry, their persistent adversary. Luckily, Joshua arrived just in time with the carriage, freeing Lincoln from his restraints. They swiftly boarded the carriage and escaped. Yet pursued by the relentless vampire horde, escape seemed impossible. Unexpectedly, the long-oppressed slaves gave a signal, rowing them in canoes to a dilapidated church. Witnessing the slaves' plight, Lincoln realized the fight against vampires wasn't his alone. To truly save the nation, he must enter politics, abolish slavery, and rally all souls yearning for freedom to rise up.
Until every man is free, we are all slaves.
However, upon learning of Lincoln's grand ambition, Henry immediately sought him out to intervene, because preserving slavery was the only thing that had kept the vampires in check all these years. If the North-South balance shattered, the nation would plunge into chaos, inevitably leading to far greater bloodshed. Unfortunately, Lincoln was resolute and unwilling to compromise. To practice true democracy and freedom, he laid down his weapons, gradually rising in politics through words and ideals, finally succeeding in being elected the 16th President of the United States in 1860. However, a year later, Southern states fearing the abolition of slavery seceded from the Union, firing the first shot of the Civil War at Fort Sumter in South Carolina. The following year, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation from the White House, declaring that from January 1, 1863, all enslaved people in rebellious states would be free. This proclamation won the Northern Union more support, laying a solid foundation for American democracy and freedom, but it also thoroughly enraged the vampire faction who profited from slavery. Vadoma disguised herself as a maid, quietly infiltrated the White House, and gently kissed the wrist of Lincoln's young son, William. Soon, William lay bedridden, gravely ill. Seeing the terrifying wound on William's wrist, even the doctors could not determine the illness. But Lincoln was thunderstruck, for that wound was identical in appearance to the one his mother suffered when bitten by a vampire years ago. Clearly, Adam intended to crush Lincoln's spirit by taking his beloved. Unexpectedly, this new hatred combined with the old fueled Lincoln's resolve, and he poured more troops into the battlefield, determined to end this war, dividing the nation. Bolstered by the Emancipation Proclamation, Southern states soon faced troop shortages and low morale. Left with no choice, Adam gambled everything, sending the vampire army into battle. Charging soldiers suddenly dropped their rifles and vanished amid enemy artillery. As a fierce gale swept through, Northern troops began vomiting blood, collapsing one after another on the battlefield. The surviving commander was bewildered, completely unaware their enemies were cursed undead creatures. Fortunately, in the crisis, President Lincoln recalled vampires' weakness to silver. He mobilized the nation, collecting all silver items to be forged into weapons overnight. Once deployed, these supplies could instantly turn the tide and secure victory. Sadly, the journey to the front line was 80 miles. Any mishap along the way would doom the nation. Therefore, Lincoln retrieved his long-dormant axe, preparing to personally escort the silver aboard a train to the Southern front. Though age had slowed his reflexes, the nation's future was at stake. Lincoln fearlessly boarded the train bound for its destination. Unbeknownst to them, Progenitor Adam learned of the plan and mustered forces to intercept the train. Johnson, guarding the car, heard noises above and readied himself, opening the window to investigate. Unexpectedly, a vampire attacked from below, yanking him down. In the crisis, Johnson quickly fired multiple shots, killing the immediate threat, but before he could catch his breath, monsters scaled the car and charged with roars. They underestimated him, thinking a sneak attack from behind would finish him. Instead, Johnson broke free and easily took down two. Hearing more vampires climbing aboard, Johnson urged Lincoln to prevent the train from stopping at all costs. The two split up, firing relentlessly at the attackers. While Johnson frantically adjusted controls to keep the train steady, a vampire crept onto the car and lunged at him with jaws wide. Luckily, Lincoln fired a timely rescue shot. They then fought the invaders together. In the struggle, Lincoln seemed to recall the thrill of hunting vampires in his youth, wielding the axe with renewed, fierce fluidity. Just as he defeated the lesser foes, thinking the fight over, Adam's form suddenly emerged from the shadows, kicking Lincoln hundreds of meters away. Seeing the axe break in half, Johnson quickly threw a dagger at Adam, but the ancient vampire dodged it with ease and kicked Johnson off the train. As Johnson nearly fell from the train, Lincoln leaped without hesitation, gripping his ankle tightly, exposing himself to Adam's attack. Adam, sure of victory, bared his fangs to bite Lincoln's neck. At the critical moment, Henry extended an arm, taking the deadly strike himself. The two vampires erupted into fierce combat atop the train, ending with Henry's defeat, yet he showed no despair, only a relieved smile. Sensing something wrong, Adam checked the cargo cars and discovered Lincoln was transporting only rocks. Enraged, Adam kicked Henry down. By the time he tried to signal his allies, it was too late. They had already ignited the wooden bridge supporting the train and departed. Flames spread upward. The bridge soon buckled under the heavy train, collapsing rapidly. At the critical moment, Lincoln and Johnson leapt forward, jumping toward the opposite side and quickly fleeing toward the front carriage. But Adam, outwitted, wouldn't let them escape. He kicked the main support pillar, forcing them to jump from the car and struggle for balance. Seeing a brutal fight inevitable, Lincoln wrapped a silver chain around his fist, judged Adam's position, and delivered a crushing blow. Adam, caught off guard, had his chest pierced and was killed. They thought the crisis was over, but unexpectedly, the heavy train car suddenly collapsed onto the wooden bridge, forcing Lincoln and Johnson to climb with difficulty along the tracks. As the bridge continued to crumble, the train lost power. At the critical moment, Henry alone strained to hold the rails, allowing Lincoln and Johnson to escape safely. The silver, capable of turning the war, had already been secretly transported to the front lines by Lincoln's wife, Mary. Realizing defeat was imminent, Vadoma sought to kill Mary for revenge. Mary recognized her son's killer, loaded a silver chain into a long gun, and shot Vadoma without hesitation. Empowered by silver weapons, the Undead Legion quickly collapsed. The Civil War, which nearly tore America apart, ended in a decisive victory for the Union. Under Lincoln's leadership, a great nation founded on liberty and equality once again rose to glory. Henry told Lincoln that the remaining vampires had fled the country and tried to persuade him to become a vampire, but Lincoln steadfastly refused. In the modern day, Henry approaches a man in a Washington, D.C. bar, just as he once approached Lincoln.